In this episode, a great white shark launches itself into the knee-deep shallows for a brutal attack on a young mother of 4. Half-beached, the great white shark thrashes around the water with the woman in its mouth during one of the biggest shark attack sprees known as Black December. Hit that like button and subscribe right now. This is the terrifying shark attack on Fay Jones Besther. Welcome to Final Affliction. The shark attack on Fay Jones Besther was the final attack of a spate of shark attacks that plagued the KwaZulu-Natal region of South Africa. Dubbed Black December, the shark attacks began on the 18th of December the year before, in 1957. A teenager was bitten by a shark whilst surfing in the region. He survived the attack, but others weren't so lucky. Between December 1957 and April 1958, 9 people were attacked by sharks in the coastal waters near the port of Durban. 6 of these proved to be fatal. Fay was on vacation with her family. They had been through a lot recently. Only the year before, she had tragically lost her husband when he had been killed in a motorcycle accident. Now, raising her 4 young children alone, they were enjoying a family holiday for the first time since losing their father. The morning of April 5th was overcast and gray. The air was warm and humid. A damp mugginess filled the air. Fay and her children headed down to the beach. It was situated at Uvango, 80 miles southwest of Durban. The water was relatively calm, but it was muddy and murky. The night before, a strong swell had battered the coastline, churning up the seas, turning them from blue to brown and gray. The beach was popular with surfers. At the break of dawn, they entered the water, bobbing up and down on the water's foaming surface, catching wave after wave and gliding into KwaZulu-Natal's rugged coastline. Fay walked across the sand. She slipped off her shoes and made her way to a spot near the water's edge. The sand was rough and coarse. It crunched under her feet. Her children followed eagerly. They dumped their things on the ground and immediately set about playing with each other on the beach. By mid-morning, the clouds were beginning to clear. As it did so, the bright sun beat down on the family. It was heating up. Whilst the children played on the beach, Fay decided to take a dip. The shark's board boat was hovering 30 to 40 meters out from the beach. They were leaning over the side of the boat, hauling up the shark net and inspecting it. The stormy seas the previous night had damaged the net. These nets had been installed in 1952 to protect swimmers and surfers from shark attacks. It was a system that had worked well. It had dramatically reduced the number of attacks along South Africa's beaches, and it had filled locals and holidaymakers with a sense of security each time they entered the water. Even to this day, every morning at dawn, the sharks' board go out to check the nets. Mile upon mile, they haul the nets, checking for any sharks and checking for damage. On this particular morning, they sent a clear warning to beachgoers not to enter the water after finding one of the nets was broken. It would take them some time to repair the net, and whilst they did so, the only safety barrier between humans and sharks would be removed. Upon hearing this news, Fay decided she would go for a paddle instead. She entered the water just by the mouth of a river. There was a group of about 18 people doing the same. Some were even swimming in the sea despite the cautions. Fay kicked the water slightly. Feeling the coolness on her feet as she looked out to sea, she could hear her children playing happily on the sand. Jeff Wolf, owner of the Uvango Hotel, which stood meters from the beach, spoke with the group. He warned them that it wasn't safe whilst the nets were being repaired. A couple of people heeded his warning and left the water, but most, including Fay, remained. Then suddenly there was a commotion in the water. In an instant, the peaceful scene turned to terror. A huge splash, and Fay was knocked off her feet. In knee-deep water, a 10-foot great white shark came barreling into Fay's legs. She fell forwards, landing in the water with a splash. Within seconds, the shark had grabbed Fay's torso and threw her up in the air. Fay screamed, then she smashed back down into the sea. The group she was with frantically slapped and kicked the surface of the water to deter the shark. Fay didn't have time to get up out of the water to get away. In only seconds, the shark wheeled around to Fay's body. As it did so, its rough skin and powerful tail and fins cut and abraded another woman's legs in the shallow water. The shark opened its jaws wide and clamped down around Fay's torso. It thrashed around, tossing Fay's small body from side to side as it ferociously bit into her. But with all the commotion going on around it and all the people shouting, the shark let go of Fay and swam off. Rescuers rushed to Fay's side. She lay in the shallow waters, still and silent. The water around her was bright red. She was hurriedly carried out of the water and to the beach only meters away. Before she was even laid on the sandy ground, she was dead. It was a death that shocked those who witnessed it. It was a truly terrible and tragic end to the young mother's life. At just 28 years old, she left behind her children, aged just 8, 7, 6, and 3 years old. There were some 500 people on the beach that day. There were many people in the sea despite the warnings of the sharks boards and the locals. Some people were in much deeper water than Fay, and she and the group of people she was with assumed, standing in only knee-deep water, they would be safe. Eyewitnesses said that the attack had only lasted a few seconds. It had been intense and rapid. Fay had died from massive blood loss and shock as the shark took a huge bite of her left side. Her left leg had almost completely been severed, and her torso was severely damaged. From the descriptions people gave, it was suspected that the shark was a very young great white. Authorities hunted for the shark afterwards. They let out baited drum lines, but they were unsuccessful. The first shark nets deployed at Durban's beaches were in 1943. These had the desired effect of catching sharks and reducing attacks in the area. But the nets didn't extend to all swimming beaches. Almost 10 years later, in 1952, 7 gill nets, each 130 meters long, were laid along the Durban beachfront. In the first year of operation, 552 sharks were caught in these nets. The shark attacks that took place in Black December, which actually ran through to the following April, had a devastating impact on Durban's tourism industry. There are theories as to why Black December had such a high number of shark attacks. Apparently, whaling boats had been operating nearby, filling the seas with blood, which attracted the sharks to the area. Furthermore, there had been a series of storms that had flooded the land. Some livestock had been washed into the sea, enticing sharks to the coasts to feed on their carcasses. The stormy conditions had also churned up the sea, so visibility was poor. This is often given as a reason for shark attacks. If the water is not clear, then sharks can mistake people for their usual prey. Lastly, the tourism industry was thriving prior to Black December. Visitors splashed in the seas in their masses. The commotion and noise might have attracted sharks to the area, more so than usual. But following the string of shark attacks, tourists left the beaches in droves. The authorities needed to keep people safe. They needed to keep the tourism industry going. With more nets in place, gradually people returned to the beaches. They returned to the sea. Whilst the risks were still there, people felt better knowing that the beaches were surrounded in a safety barrier. The terrible shark attack on Fay was one of the most terrifying attacks during Black December. For beachgoers, the thought of a shark torpedoing itself feet away from the beach in knee-deep water is terrifying. They realized they could no longer even dip their feet in the water without the danger of meeting their untimely, final affliction.